Our next segment is going to be a very, very interesting one. We'll talk a lot more about transforming the great resignation into the great hire. I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to each of our panelists. Please put your hands together as I welcome Mr. Anuj Kathuria, Chief People and Strategy Officer, Waaree Group. A round of applause, please, as I also welcome Ms. Pooja Shukla, Director and Head HR, Umicore. Please put your hands together as I welcome Mr. Rajesh Manik, Director, Talent and Board Member, Deloitte. May I also present to you Ms. Riyaa Roshan, Talent Head, Colliers, and a very warm welcome to our moderator, Mr. Sandeep Das, Head, L&D and D&I, JLL India. May I request all of you to please put your hands together for each of them joining us here on stage. We're going to follow a very similar platform. Can we please have 35 minutes up on the timer? After about 30 minutes, we'll have a 5-minute open house for all of you. So 35 minutes on the timer right here, and then we can take it on for an interaction.
A very good afternoon all, and first of all I would like to thank the organizers for putting together such an event where we have industry stalwarts, thought leaders sharing a lot of insights about the pertinent issues that the entire industry is facing right now. My name is Sandeep Das and I would be the moderator for this particular panel discussion, and it's a pleasure to invite my esteemed panel members. First I would request all of them to quickly give a brief introduction about themselves, and then we get into the discussion phase. So, Rajesh.
Hi, good evening everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I think in our earlier conversation we said that we'll keep the introductions very succinct so that we do not get into very exaggerated introductions about each one of us. So in short, my name is Rajesh Manik Sarkar. I lead the talent for Deloitte for its large business and also for its business delivery center, and more of that you'll hear as we speak. Thank you.
Good evening everyone, myself Pooja Shukla. I am heading the HR and admin for all Umicore entities in India and also a director on board. So it's been 6 years working with the company and really enjoying my stint. Thank you so much.
Hi, a very good evening to all. This is Riyaa Roshan here. I've been heading talent for Colliers. Thank you so much.
Good evening everyone, my name is Anuj Kathuria. I head Human Resources and Business Strategy Integration for Waaree Group of Companies. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you all. So, just before the panel, we were listening to Dr. Ritu Anand, and she kind of transformed this entire panel name from a great resignation, because it is more of a Western concept, to great retention, and how do we leverage that and convert into a great hire. And the panel kind of would touch upon all those aspects. Now, if you look at the global arena right now, a couple of words which are trending right now, of course pandemic, nobody can beat pandemic as a word, but then great resignation, of course it was coined in the month of May 2021 by Anthony Klutz, and since then it has been gripping the notice of entire world. And if I talk about Indian context, the research done reveals that the attrition rate in India is the highest in the last 20 years. And one of the biggest phenomena which has been observed is that people are shifting careers and they are jumping into new career streams, right? So before I go to the panel discussion, I would like to do a quick survey and research here itself. I would like to ask all audience members to please raise their hand if you would have changed your job in the last 2 years or are contemplating to change your job in the next couple of months. Can you please raise your hands?
That's a good one. So you have a ready pick, is it?
Including panelists or?
Yeah, I have changed.
You've changed or you want to change?
I have changed.
Too.
Ah, okay.
So almost 50%.
Yeah. So I think the research is proven right, because within this sample survey we could find that almost 50% present in the room, including the panelists, have changed or are contemplating a change. So with that I would like to move to the next section, which is more about what could be the reason of this phenomena? Is it a better pay, lure of better pay? Is it because of work-life balance? I heard previous panel touch upon all of these aspects. Is it because of mental well-being? Is it because of working condition? Or is it because of the massive learning people undertook during the pandemic and they realized that they could do something else or do something better? So whatever is the reason, this is mostly a purely a post-pandemic effect, because we never noticed this prior to the pandemic. And what I would now throw up on the panel members is to understand where exactly this started and how is it contributing to their organization. So my question number one, how has the talent market changed in the last 1.5 years, and which we call the great resignation, of course, or probably the great retention. What would you predict will happen in the next 2 years? Because what has happened in the last 1.5 years is gone. What is going to happen in the next 2 years? So I would like to start with Rajesh.
Thank you. Actually, when I was talking with Anuj, and he had a lot of stats to speak about, and I will not steal that thunder from him, because stats are important. But one thing which I could correlate, that when I was looking at the McKinsey report, and we've all read the term great resignation, and it comes primarily from that McKinsey report, which stated that as per the survey, 41% of the people have already switched jobs or are in the process of changing jobs. And if we were to sort of simulate that with this audience or with this panel, it sort of resonates with the 50%. So, so that means it's not that vested. The report may be a very global report, but it's not that India is isolated or insulated from that report. That's the first observation I have. The second thing is, before we talk about the future, which I'll leave it to some of my friends, what I also want to talk is about the pandemic. Okay, now we've had 2+ years of pandemic. If you look at our work kind of a profile, we've spent hours and hours in front of the laptop, hours and hours in front of Zoom calls and Microsoft Teams call or Skype calls. Earlier there used to be some commuting time, some tea break, lunch kind of a time. All that sort of got completely bundled into only one time, which is work time. And I guess maybe in 2022, maybe it would have minimized a bit, but whole of 2020 and 2021, employees across organizations have experienced that there is no me time or there's no free time. People have started operating at 9:30 a.m. and have continued till 8 and 9 in the night. So it's been back-to-back kind of a calls, and families have wondered, is this how you work really? So this is what has happened. One thing which has also happened is everybody's gone through a lot of emotional trouble. There have been deaths in the family, deaths among relatives, deaths among close ones, sickness, recovery, all of that has happened. It's been a bit of traumatized kind of a phase also for everyone. Children who are in the college have not seen the college life because they had to operate online. Now, all of this, we probably may not talk too much about it, or we may not tom about it, or we may not really, invite spotlight. Arey, mere saath aisa hua, I'm finding it difficult to cope with it. I need to go for a therapy session. But if these same things, if you were to look into a Western world, or say America, in US, corporate employees will, talk too much about it. That I had to deal with this, I had to deal with that, and I went to a therapist and stuff like that. Indians by nature are probably a little more resilient towards this kind of stress in life, and we tend to bounce back pretty quick. It's like the Mumbaiite, maybe a few hours back there could be a bomb blast, but after 2-3 hours we are again back into the trains and we are traveling and commuting. So one thing what I'm realizing is the pandemic has had a deep impact all over the world, all right. However, we have decided to just brush ourselves of all that has happened and move ahead. So, we do not really talk too much about the pain, depression, frustration and all that, okay. So, that is the first part. The second thing that I wanted to talk about is, in the pandemic, business has been growing in many of the sectors. And with that, hiring also has been phenomenally on the rise. In fact, a lot of you in the room or on the panel would acknowledge that hiring in these last 2 years have been much more than what it used to be in 2018 or 19. So that's again surprising, right? I mean, everybody thought, things will go down. But even if you look around, if you look at the auto guys, or if you look at the buys, or if you look at the people in different kind of economic segment, they're all doing well. You don't really find people who are not able to cope with this pandemic. And I think that's one thing which you have seen. So what I have also seen is people are rediscovering themselves post pandemic in terms of their skill sets, in terms of their value creation, in terms of their preferences of what they want to do ahead. And amidst all this, we have the Generation Z and the millennials who also is trying to repurpose themselves. So I'll come to that a little later. I don't want to stretch too much in my initial conversation, but I just wanted to give this example that the Generation Z is trying to repurpose themselves, find their spot in this entire corporate world. Where are they going to be? And that's the biggest talent pool that we are going to sort of have. Anuj was saying 1 billion people, right?
1 billion.
1 million.
1 billion.
Billion, yeah.
Yes.
So 1 billion people are going to enter the corporate world. And so that's the big segment that's coming in while we are still multi-generational. And reskilling yourself or refinding your value has become so important that I was talking to my cook who comes in the morning at 7 a.m. to my home and to cook. And then my wife tells me that, she cannot come again at 11:30, 12 because she drives an auto rickshaw. And then in the evening she'll come at 6:30 and then she'll go back home after cooking. So I said, wow, I mean, a couple of years back, a buy would be only a buy and a cook will be only a cook. But today you have a multi-skill kind of workforce, and that's helping her rediscover her lifestyle, her comfort, her financial security. So I've just given you a little broad spread sort of a reference point for now, but more of that we'll hear from our colleagues, that if we look at a corporate world, what are some of the trends that we are observing?
Sure. Thank you so much, Rajesh. I think reskilling, and if we look at 2 years from now, you spoke about people doing multiple jobs. They are reskilling themselves to kind of start separate thread of livelihood. While you represent the consulting space, I would also like to hear from Pooja, who comes from the manufacturing side, her experience of how the Great Resignation has hit the manufacturing space, and what are the trends that you feel would emerge in the next 2 years?
Sure. So typically in manufacturing, when we were having a discussion and Anuj mentioned, so seeing that the inflation going up, so that also to an extent did trigger, and we see that pent up demand happening where everyone is out in the market. So definitely that is something which has triggered it, and to an extent how I see it in future, definitely the stickiness to the job does go down. So the overall mindset of our Gen Zs and millennials is very different, and they do come with a mindset where they would want to like relook and keep moving after a certain time. But at the same time, as organizations, we think it's definitely important to really work and rework on how we can look forward to retaining our talent. That's the bigger thing which we look at.
Sure. Yeah. So again, one key word that comes from Pooja is retention of talent. So my next question is, around retention, and this is what Dr. Ritu Anand also spoke about. So my next question is to Riyaa. What are you doing as a company or industry to retain your key talent, as well as leverage the sudden surge in the talent market to ramp up the right kind of talent?
Okay. So talking about Colliers, the first thing, I mean, in general, we do a lot of things. So making it a point, after hearing my colleague, I would want to say that any employee will stay longer if we become a very caring organization. After COVID, a lot of things have changed, and as my colleague rightly said, people have gone through up and down. And because of all this thing and the work culture that has changed from a 9 to 6 job, during COVID times it went on till 9 to 11 also for certain employees, and there was no work-life balance, and that has caused depression, stress, and it went ahead. So to retain those factors, we need to invest in employees. Investing in employees is just not meaning like giving them a high pay. Pay is one of the factors. In current generation, pay is just not everything. The first factor is about learning. First, the most key factor to any employee or any candidate whom I meet right now is, do we value them? That's the first thing. If we value their work, and it starts with onboarding. How is the onboarding process going on with the employee? We need to show them that we care for them. And then the second thing is learning. Then the third thing that we want to also focus on is like innovation. And also, now innovation is a broader spectrum, but how to innovate? Innovate is like getting those G's and Z generation coming into the picture by, hiring graduate trainees to our organization and putting them in each department, so that you get those ideas that is coming into picture, which is very new, and they don't have any barrier on it, because they are those generations who are like, they're just on spot, and they don't have a fear factor, and they don't have blockages, which I think everybody would agree to me that we all have those blockages. They are those young generation who doesn't have a blockage, so they just just throw up. So I think we need to come with innovation factor, learning factor, and most important is caring, and they need to feel valued. If these points are covered in any organization, we can retain our employees much better. And because after the post-pandemic, people have become more sensitive, and every candidate whom I meet right now, they want to invest. They first ask me, what is the office time? So that's the first question. And the second question they come up with, is it flexible? Like, there was the recent conversation that I had yesterday was, does your company give me work flexibility? These are the questions that I get now rather than asking about a pay pack. So these are the important factors that we need to, as an employer, we need to focus on, so that as an employee, because we are the person between the employer and the employee. So we are the people who are, we are the people who are supposed to take care of our employees as well, not as well the employer as well. So we need to build that barrier between both of us. So that is important. So, and then definitely, Ma'am Ritu had already said, but I would also want to insist on this point, like happy exit of employee is very important. Because at the end of the day, when we say human resource, it's a valued resource. So we need to, make them feel that they are important. Let them go anywhere, because I come from a IPC, section basically. So there is a lot of competition in our sector. We are into real estate. So when one employee leaves, there is a tendency that the manager feels bad, then there is a competition. All these things are very normal, but everything, we need to neutralize that factor and come into a common ground, accept a happy exit, feel them valued. When they leave the organization, when they go out of your organization, they should remember you. And next time when you have a conversation with them, it should be a very positive note that will help your employees to come back. That is called retaining employees. So these are the key things that I feel that we should value.
Sure.
Sandeep, just a quick point
Yes.
on that. I feel, today flexibility is no longer a differentiator that you can use. Okay? I mean, you can't say मेरे पास flexibility है. I mean, we'll soon have to come to terms with it that you have to have that in your value proposition.
Yes.
If you don't have flexibility, it may create a disincentive for a individual to join the organization. That's why that question you get, that is your organization providing flexibility? And a lot of organizations would have already adopted hybrid in some form or the other. Being hybrid, in my view, also is not being innovative. Meaning, you can't say you are the only unique person doing hybrid. You go around the corporate world, you will find a lot of people doing hybrid. So, some may be in an illusion that hybrid, flexibility, if you are doing, we are doing great. But then it's no longer a differentiator.
Yeah, but then the kind of, like when you speak to those candidates, these are your major requirements right now.
Because it's a must have from them.
Yeah.
It's not an option,
It's-
right?
yeah.
They're looking at it as a must have.
Yeah, it's not a must have, but I feel that we need to value those factors also so that they feel that we are caring. So at the end of the day, employees leave because that one part is, it's not about pay, right? It's about that they are not valued, they're not cared. So if you come to that factor, they still stay in the organization, whatever, high and lows that you're going through or whatever is happening with them. I feel that.
Okay.
Sure, thank you. So, what we heard Riyaa talk about is flexibility, value that you give to an employee, but she represents the services sector where people can definitely talk about flexibility. Now, let's go to the manufacturing side and hear from Anuj. What are the various things that are key to retention of employees, and what are you doing in the manufacturing side to retain your key talent?
See, I think to answer that question, we need to go back to the roots. I somehow beg to differ with what my colleague said over here. It's nothing about being right or wrong, it's about a different perspective. We are living in times where novelties of morning become obsolete by the evening. Let's look at the last 1 decade and so. The point at which I have a difference of opinion is that all these changes have not happened in the last 2 years. It's a build-up of the last 1 decade. And there are multiple levers which have contributed to this. So it's an analogy of a bamboo shoot. You keep on watering it, nothing will happen. Suddenly after a few years, it starts going 50 feet. Now why? It's not just one day it grew. It is spreading its wings, it's spreading its roots underneath the ground. So let's reflect back. What has changed in the last 10 years? The way we bank, the way we shop, the way we talk, the way we work, the way we manage organizations. The construct of what used to be a 40-45 hour concept called job doesn't exist anymore. It just doesn't exist anymore. Add to that a layer of complexity, digital transformation, disruption, pandemic definitely played a very important role. Changes in business models, from service-oriented business models to network-orchestrated business models. Geopolitical issues, transition to green energy, net zero, everyone's running after that. Valuation game. Now what happens in such a scenario? You are faced with a challenge wherein there is a growing skills instability. Your skill index, your supply demand completely gets bollocked. And that happens. And it's not happening right now. This happened early in 90s. This happened way back in 53, 54 as well. So the fundamental is that it's a build-up of last 10 years. Yes, the pandemic tended to accelerate the pace of acceleration and created multiple different layers around it. Attrition has happened. Resignation has happened. It will keep on happening. And as you know, when you asked me the question, I was reminded of a very famous saying by Abraham Maslow. He said, if the only tool you have is a hammer, you tend to see every problem as a nail. And I see that happening around even my organization in many parts, which I have tried to now change, that you cannot give solutions to today's problems using past techniques. You have to rethink the entire ecosystem concept. So yes, flexibility, you mentioned Riyaa. My friend mentioned about caring, you know, multiple different jobs. Moonlighting was a taboo at one point of time, today it's a norm. So what we are trying to do is, I would say in 3 broad pedestals. Number 1, reorchestrate our EVP, employee value proposition. And that has to be hyper personalized and hyper contextualized. If it is not that, somebody else will give you. Products and services can be priced, your experience cannot be. That's our mantra we're trying to do, number 1. Number 2, there is no point fighting a bull, you will lose. Can you tame the bull and make sure the bull works for you, is what we're trying to do, in the sense that how do you reorchestrate the foundation pillars of your organizational DNA and culture? By looking at changing the concept of job itself, right? Gig economy is a true element today in multiple different organizations across the globe. How do you rope in, how do you have a workforce of one where you have full-time employees, permanent employees, fixed-term employment, part-time employees, gig workers who are allowed to work with multiple different organizations at the same point of time, like Rajesh mentioned, the cook element. That's number 2. Number 3 is, I think finances definitely play an important role. Number 4, what we're trying to do is get rid of the existing competency matrices and those vertical career paths. They don't matter anymore. The intent is to ensure the employee brings his or her complete self to work. In an organization context, I would perhaps leverage 4 or 5 of my skills. But as an individual, as a human, I would have 20 different skill sets. Can I bring those also to my work? Can I create alternate employment opportunities for me? Can I create alternate avenues for growth? So it's not about just vertical growth or horizontal, it's in situ growth. It's about a career lattice being created and multiple different opportunities. If you can't contribute here, can you contribute in a different way, right? So I could be a project manager in one specific business unit. I could be a coach, I could be a mentor, I could be taking a cookery class somewhere, I could be teaching sports to my colleagues' kids. So how do you rope in that entire element of it and then encircling it with, as I mentioned earlier, hyper collaboration, you know, hyper personalization, hyper contextualization for every single person. One shoe fit all doesn't work. So when it comes to hiring, when it comes to learning, when it comes to compensation, rewards, when it comes to your talent management, when it comes to your entire ecosystem, it has to be hyper personalized. So the intent is, how do you create that journey map for an employee and use human-centered design to do that. We don't create that because I don't know what a Riyaa wants or what a Rajesh wants. Let the employee be there. Let me offer him a bouquet or her a bouquet of offerings. Let him or her pick it up. If there are certain things missing, let me go back and check what's missing. How can I create that periphery around me? So like someone mentioned, our jobs tend to be 11, 12 hours work, right? In essence, it's a second home. So when we create a periphery around our home, when we create those elements around our home, why can't we do that as part of our work? That's what we are trying to do. It's worked in certain spaces and it doesn't work in certain spaces. So you have to also look at the segmentation of workforce. This might work with one set, might not work with the blue-collared workforce, might not work with certain other sets of workforce. So it has to be meeting the demands of that workforce. That's the intent with which we are working and have tasted certain success and multiple failures. But as they say, life has to go on, we'll learn from those mistakes.
Thank you, Anuj. I think I really like that 3 words that you spoke about: hyper collaboration, hyper personalization,
hyper contextualization.
Hyper contextualization, and that kind of put me into thought. The recent Android 12 version has a switch which is called work and personal space.
Yes.
So probably there would be a time when, and you also spoke about moonlighting and gig workforce becoming acceptable to the industry, which was erstwhile not accepted. Probably there would be a toggle on my laptop. Now I work for Colliers, now I am working for JLL. And we are fierce competitors sitting next to each other for the records.
Yeah.
Okay, so being conscious of the time that we have at hand, there is last question which I want all panel members to touch upon, is that, and I think you touched upon that aspect, is in the late 90s and early 2000s, we saw similar kind of flux happening. And at that point of time, there was a massive skilling and reskilling of people, so that people are recalibrated and they kind of jump into a different industry. Do you think there is a need to go back to the basics right now and replicate the model that we adopted in the 90s and 2000? And what is your organization doing regarding this? So, starting from you.
Okay, I'll be a bit quick. Just for us to get a good sense of it, there's a concept of work, worker and workplace. And today is the time to actually redefine all of these in the context of your industry. So, how is the work done? Who is doing it? Where is it being done? How is it being done? All of those needs to be revisited and redefined, and that's something which our organization, Deloitte, is also doing in a big manner, because that obviously redefines everything around us. The second is the workplace. All of you would to some extent agree that we are soon seeing the death of the physical workplace or the office, okay? And today, the work goes to the worker. Earlier times, worker used to go to the work. So that's the shift that we are seeing. The offices also, from the employee experience and the value proposition part that you spoke about, we believe that today the offices, we should be advising our admin and our brands team and our communications team to re-look at the office itself. Do you want the office to again remain like cubicles and work desks and meeting rooms and cabins? Or do you want to convert that into a collaboration kind of a hub or a charging kind of a center?
Cafe.
Where you come, get professionally work charged, rejuvenated, and you go back. I mean, we work places are more or less on those lines. So work, the concept of work and the workplace definitely is changing. And with that, the concept of worker. Now, I'll give straight away example from Deloitte and the Big Four. Traditionally, we would be very set in our mind that, you know, this job has to be done by an MBA, that job has to be done by a chartered accountant, that job has to be done by a law professional. And we would have a certain cost of acquiring that talent and delivering the work through that professional. Today, we are looking at this point that if you want to bring in a higher employee experience and a personalized employee experience, which my colleague spoke about, and at the same time, if you want to give a quality experience to your clients, and at the same time you want to attract talent and retain talent, and you want to maintain a lower cost of service delivery or lower talent cost, then your talent pool needs to be different. Meaning, if a chartered accountant and an MBA was doing a certain rudimentary, operational, transactional kind of a work, now we cannot ask them to do that job. So that's where the redefining of work happens, and they need to be more in an advisory or a consultation kind of a work. Then who will do that operational, transactional work? So we've really tried this out with graduates. We've been hiring huge number of graduates with no background. Of course, we must have also tried to do it the difficult way, that teach everything to the graduate, the laws, the policies, the technical aspect. But then we realize that the time to production is very important. So you get a fresh graduate, you put them under some 3 weeks of training, they are able to understand what work needs to be delivered, and then you make them do that. So this is the shift what I'm saying, Sandeep, in the concept of work, worker and workplace, and that's helping us reposition ourselves.
Thank you so much. So we got 3 new words: work, workers, and workplace. Coming to Pooja, if you could talk about what as an organization you are doing.
Yeah. So, Sandeep, I think upskilling was always there. It's nothing new. So, and we could very well realize that, in fact, even employees were able to realize it because we suddenly saw that the learning hours and the learning interest suddenly shooted up during the pandemic. With regards to what the organizations are doing, definitely in terms of the digitalization, which becomes quite an important competency. So, organizations are focusing on it. Reverse mentoring is also something which we are looking at. So, many such things being done.
Thank you so much. That was a quick response. Riyaa, what are your thoughts about, of course you spoke about a lot of those aspects.
So what I feel is, because I'm coming from a service sector line, a lot of learning in the past that has happened was all classroom learnings, like you spend almost 3 to 4 months, or there are certain learnings where you go outside and learn. But right now you're in a digital age where you're just one hand and then you can reach anywhere, like one click. So I feel learning is happening, it's an ongoing process, it's happening 24/7, you take it anything. I can start with LinkedIn, or that's like the common thing that's very common that everybody is using out. And the learning happened after the pandemic, so during the pandemic and post-pandemic. So learning is a constant process that's been happening for a while, and everybody is upskilling their small, big skills from content to anything and everything that they can go through. You not be an HR, you don't have to complete an MBA right now to be an HR. Like, you have all those small little courses that you can complete, and then you have got certain skills on it. So you're constantly quite active. So I feel in this era, you're constantly learning, and this is the learning process that's happening, and where, as he rightly mentioned, you're spread around the place right now. So you don't need a second right now, and the learning is a constant process. So it's happening. That's always happening.
Thank you so much, Riyaa. In fact, what we heard is that there is a 3-week employee productivity time, and learning is a continuous process. And when we talk about reskilling, Anuj, what are your thoughts around what does your company do to ensure that people are reskilled and skilled to become ready for the job?
So, William Edward Deming said, learning is not compulsory, but neither is survival. Choice is yours. Right? So, the basic fundamental being, the question that you asked, 90s versus today. In 90s, it was imposition. Today, the concept is of experience economy. It's all about hyper-personalization, hyper-contextualization. You don't get to choose what I want to do. You let me choose what I want to do.
Absolutely.
It's my life, and skill is the new currency. So who has to earn that currency and who has to spend it? It lies in the hands of the beholder, not anybody else. We are just catalysts. We are just enablers. We are just facilitators. You can provision, you can enable, you can encourage, you can bring a horse to the well. You can never force a horse to drink. And that's the philosophy we are applying in our organization. Pretty simply put.
Great, thank you so much for your insights. Being conscious of the time that we are almost 2 minutes beyond the start time, but I would want if anybody from the audience would take the opportunity to ask a question or two to the panel members. So the floor is open for questions, which means we don't have much questions, but we are there around, so in case you want to catch up and talk about that. But it was a meaningful conversation with a lot of insights that came from the consulting space, from the manufacturing space, and from the services space. And I'm sure I did not summarize everything again. This is indeed a great opportunity for us to relook at our talent strategy and how do we make use of the opportunity to ensure that some of the aspects that previous panel members spoke about, how do you improve diversity, how do you improve equity in an organization, how can you make more people inclusive. So that's what I'll talk about, and thank you all for.
Just one point,
Sure.
Sandeep. I mean, when we talk about great resignation, one of the nightmare which every HR team currently undergoes is what is the attrition percentage looking like, what are we reporting every month in the dashboard. The people that we are hiring, will they potentially join us? So that wait and watch period till they actually join us and get onboarded, and the time between offer and onboarding, what is it that the HR teams will do to engage with those prospective candidates to ensure that they join. Or at times you have those candidates, especially in the tech world or in the hot skills domain that we spoke about pre-session, where they will come to the table and tell the recruiter, मेरे पास 2 offers है. What will you do better? So now these kind of that Diwar kind of dialogue is getting a little repositioned, that मेरे पास 2 offers है. And now will the recruiter say, how shameless is this person still coming for an interview with the third company? But we can't tell that also. So we have to say, okay, so what?
That's the reality of today.
Right.
And we better face it.
Yeah. So one of the point which I was telling with this group, and I will close at that, is that in the post-pandemic or during the pandemic, people have also been evaluating about a concept called YOLO, which I really want to talk about, which is you only live once. And this is a concept which is really being seen significantly amongst the Gen Z population, who is in the mindset that who is to decide that we want to live this way only, or they are re-questioning that the life that I have lived so far, do I need to live it this way only, or can I live it differently? And this is also causing a lot of pressure on attrition, where people are leaving big brands for what? To start their own business, or to pursue their own passion, or to take a break. I mean, the reasons for attrition can be very varied. So we are in challenging times, but interesting also. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you all for your valuable insights.
Thank you, Sandeep.